Hey besties. Things are heating up fast because Blake Lively is on the verge of being fully exposed, and honestly, this might be the biggest turning point in her entire legal drama. This is the document that everyone's been waiting for. The one that could finally show what's been going on behind the scenes of her involvement with It Ends With Us. For months, there's been speculation about the contract Blake never attached to her lawsuit, the very contract that's supposed to prove she was officially hired under an employment agreement. In most employment discrimination cases, you have to include your employment contract as evidence, right? But Blake didn't, and that's where everything starts to look suspicious. Why didn't she include her actual actor's loan-out agreement, the standard contract used for film roles, when she sued? Why did she instead attach a writer's agreement that came later, long after the main deal? Some experts believe it's because her original contract might contain clauses that don't favor her legal claims, clauses that could undermine her case in court. Well, guess what? That contract is now about to become public. Yesterday, I explained how the judge ruled to unseal a recording and declaration related to the person who claimed that Justin Baldoni, the film's director, was verbally harsh or unprofessional. Apparently, there's an audio recording tied to this declaration that's been hidden until now. Because of a new court rule, sealed documents aren't automatically uploaded to the public docket anymore. Instead, the parties exchange them privately, meaning it's up to them to decide when to make the content public. As of now, the files still haven't appeared online, but the system ensures that once Wayfarer or Blake's team reattaches them, they'll be publicly available. But the real bombshell? Blake's contract itself is about to be unsealed. The judge gave both parties a deadline to explain why her employment agreement and her California Civil Rights Division, CRD complaint should remain sealed. And here's where it gets intense. Blake hasn't sent any letter to the court defending her right to keep these documents private. Meanwhile, Wayfarer, the production company that worked on It Ends With Us, sent their own letter saying they want to withdraw their request to seal Blake's loan-out agreement. Translation? That contract is about to hit the public record. And honestly, this is a massive deal. In the film industry, a standard actor agreement typically includes everything from base salary, bonuses and back-end points, a share of the film's profits, to travel perks, glam teams, assistance, and trailer access. It also spells out what creative input the actor has, like script approval, co-star selection, wardrobe input, and even marketing obligations like interviews or social media posts. Basically, it reveals how much power an actor truly has on a project. If this contract becomes public, we'll finally know what Blake was really paid, not just the rumored $3 million figure that's been floating around online. We'll also see whether she had producer status or creative control, both of which could seriously weaken her legal argument that she was mistreated or lacked authority. Because if the documents show that she had say over the script, co-stars, or the final cut of the movie, it'll be nearly impossible for her to claim she was just a powerless employee. Wayfarer has already stated that Blake didn't have final cut approval in her contract, which would mean she wasn't entitled to override the director's creative decisions. But there could still be clauses giving her approval power over wardrobe, co-stars, or press materials, which, if true, would paint a very different picture of her role. And that's what the judge wants to see before deciding what remains sealed and what the public has a right to know. So if these files are released, we're going to find out how much Blake was paid for her role, whether she had producer-level control, what rights she negotiated behind the scenes, and how those rights line up with the timeline of her lawsuit. And if the timeline doesn't match up, meaning she had control or compensation earlier than she claims, it could completely unravel her legal argument. To sum it up, Blake's contract, which she didn't attach to her lawsuit, is about to become public. The judge has given her every chance to keep it sealed, and she hasn't taken that opportunity. Wayfarer has pulled back their request to hide it, which means, besties, that we are finally going to see the truth about Blake Lively's involvement, her pay, her control, and her credibility. This is the document that could shift the entire case, not just for Blake, but for everyone involved in It Ends With Us. Whether this ends up proving her story or exposing her in the biggest way yet, we're about to find out very soon. Stay tuned, because once that contract drops, the internet is going to explode. Now let's talk about the executive producer agreement, because this is where things could get really interesting. That document will spell out exactly what Blake Lively's duties and responsibilities were as an executive producer, if she truly was one. Typically, that includes being involved in budget management, financing decisions, pre-production meetings, and press obligations. In short, an executive producer isn't just a figurehead, they're someone with power, authority, and often financial influence. So, if Blake's contract shows that she had control over production finances or pre-release press, it immediately puts her in a position of authority. That could completely change how the court views her claim of being mistreated or powerless. Then comes the big one, morality and conduct clauses. Standard Hollywood contracts almost always include them. These clauses give studios the right to terminate an actor's deal if their behavior brings the production into disrepute, breaches confidentiality, or damages the reputation of the studio or project. So here's the key question. Did Blake's contract include a morality clause or non-disparagement agreement? Because if it did, and she was allegedly leaking negative stories through her publicist, Leslie Sloan, stories portraying director Justin Baldoni as abusive or the set as toxic, that could be a serious breach of contract. Let's say her agreement had language like this, and it often does. The artist shall not commit any act or become involved in any situation that brings the artist or the production into public disrepute, scandal, or ridicule. Any act or statement that materially impairs the commercial value of the picture or the reputation of the producer shall constitute grounds for termination. That's standard industry wording. So if Blake's behavior during the It Ends With Us press tour created public backlash, negative headlines, or harmed the film's box office performance, Wayfarer Studios could argue that she violated this clause. And that's not all. These agreements also include confidentiality and publicity restrictions. Typically, they read something like, "The artist shall not disclose, publish, or cause to be disseminated any confidential information related to the picture, producer, or any affiliates." This includes scripts, emails, production schedules, disputes, or information about other employees or talent. That means if Blake shared internal disputes, leaked private communications, or gave misleading statements to the press that damaged the studio's image, even if those statements were technically true, she could still be in breach of that agreement. It also covers non-disparagement, meaning she can't make any public comments that could be seen as harmful or disrespectful toward Wayfarer, Justin Baldoni, or anyone else tied to the production. So if Wayfarer can prove she used the media to push a false or damaging narrative, like turning the public against the film or its director, that could be their strongest defense yet. And remember, Blake also faced backlash for promoting her own alcohol brand during the film's press run, which many felt overshadowed the movie and created negative publicity. If that violated her promotional obligations or went against her contractual PR restrictions, that could also work against her. To put it simply, once that contract is unsealed, we'll finally see what Blake actually agreed to, including whether she promised not to disparage, leak, or misrepresent anything about the production. And if she did sign those clauses and then went on to break them publicly, that could be a massive turning point in this entire case. Blake Lively is nothing short of unbelievable. The walls are closing in, the courtroom pressure is mounting, and for the first time, it looks like the truth is about to burst wide open. Today, we're diving into the most explosive development yet in the ongoing legal war surrounding Blake Lively, Wayfarer Studios, and her controversial lawsuit, one that could redefine everything we thought we knew about the It Ends With Us film, her role as an executive producer, and her alleged attempts to silence the evidence that could expose her. Because, and I'm not exaggerating here, the judge's latest order could completely flip the narrative. We're talking about unsealed documents, confidential agreements, morality clauses, and possibly the one thing that could destroy Blake Lively's entire case. So let's rewind for a second. How did we even get here? Blake Lively's been at the center of controversy ever since her falling out with Justin Baldoni and the Wayfarer production team. She sued, she went public, and she made serious claims about being mistreated and excluded. But what many people missed is that from the start, there was a missing piece, her actual contract. Now, in any employment-based lawsuit, and I mean any, the most important document you need to attach is your employment agreement. It proves you were hired, what your duties were, what your protections are, and what your compensation looks like. It's the backbone of your case. But here's where things start to look strange. When Blake Lively filed her lawsuit, she didn't include the actor's loan-out agreement, the very contract that would show her employment status. She left it out completely. Instead, she included later agreements, things she added after the fact, like her writer's protections or return to work documentation. Why would anyone not include their main employment contract in a lawsuit that's literally about employment? That's the million-dollar question. And now, it seems the court is about to answer it. See, the judge overseeing the case just dropped a bombshell. He ruled that certain sealed documents, including parts of Blake's contract and a recording related to an alleged complaint about Justin Baldoni, are going to be unsealed. For months, Blake's legal team had been fighting to keep those files hidden, claiming they contained sensitive information. But the judge wasn't buying it. He said there's a strong public interest in transparency, especially when these documents were filed in connection with major motions in the case. Translation? Blake can't hide behind confidentiality forever. The judge even gave a deadline. Both parties have to justify why the documents should stay sealed. And so far, guess what? Wayfarer has already filed their letter, saying they're withdrawing their request to keep her loan-out agreement sealed. That's huge, because if Wayfarer is saying, go ahead, unseal it, it means they have nothing to hide. And Blake's the one who might. Now let's talk about what's actually in that agreement, because this isn't just about paychecks and perks. It's about power. Standard actor agreements in Hollywood are packed with details about everything from salary to creative control to behavior clauses. They're designed to protect the studio and the star, but also to hold each accountable. So let's break down what could be in Blake's contract and why it matters so much right now. First up, salary and bonuses. Rumor has it Blake was paid around $3 million for It Ends With Us, but the exact number? Unknown. Once the contract is unsealed, we'll know for sure. And if there were performance bonuses, box office shares, or producer credits attached, it could show she had more control than she's been letting on. Then there's the big one, creative control and producer authority. See, Blake wasn't just an actress in this movie. She was an executive producer, and according to industry standards, that means she had say in pre-production, creative decisions, and possibly even post-production editing. In film hierarchy, the PGA producer, that's the Producers Guild of America credit, actually ranks above the director. Let that sink in. Blake Lively, as a credited PGA producer, technically outranked Justin Baldoni, the director she later accused of mistreatment. So if she tries to claim she was just a powerless employee, that narrative starts falling apart fast. But the real ticking time bomb inside that contract might not be the money or the control. It might be the morality clause. Almost every major studio contract includes one, and it's brutal. It basically says that if the actor does anything to bring the project or the studio into disrepute, like leaking information, spreading false claims, or behaving in a way that damages the film's reputation, the studio can terminate the contract immediately. And this is where things get spicy. Because according to insiders, Blake and her PR team allegedly leaked stories to the media about Justin Baldoni being abusive or toxic on set. Those claims, which have never been proven, caused massive backlash online and tanked the film's early reputation. If Blake's contract includes a non-disparagement or confidentiality clause, and she violated it, that's a direct breach of her own agreement. In other words, if the contract says she couldn't badmouth the production or its team members, and she did it anyway, Wayfarer has the right to fight back. Hard. Then we have confidentiality and publicity restrictions, another major section in any film deal. These usually state that the actor cannot discuss behind-the-scenes details, internal disputes, or personal information about other cast or crew members. If Blake talked publicly about what happened on set, or if her team leaked emails or texts, that would also violate those clauses. It's ironic, really. In her lawsuit, she's accusing others of breaching confidentiality and mistreating her. But if her own contract proves she was the one who broke those rules first, that flips the entire case upside down. And get this. Some of the language in these contracts can be savage. They often include statements like, "The artist shall not commit any act or become involved in any situation that brings the artist or the picture into public disrepute, scandal, or ridicule." Or, "Any act or statement by the artist that materially impairs the commercial value of the picture or the good name of the producer shall constitute grounds for termination." Now think back to that press tour. Remember the controversy about her promoting her alcohol brand instead of focusing on the film? Or those reports of behind-the-scenes tension? Those moments, in hindsight, could look like contract violations if they caused measurable damage to the movie's reputation or box office success. And the ripple effects could be enormous. If the morality clause, confidentiality clause, or termination clause shows she knowingly acted against the studio's interests, And if those actions caused measurable financial or reputational harm, Wayfarer could claw back payments, seek damages, or even sue her back for breaching the deal. That's not speculation, it's how Hollywood works. Studios have enforced these clauses before against A-list stars when their off-screen behavior hurt a project. And since Wayfarer just told the court they're fine unsealing her contract, they must be confident that what's in there supports their defense, not hers. Here's where it gets even more interesting. If the unsealed documents show that Blake had the same authority and obligations as any other executive producer, including handling budgets, overseeing creative decisions, and participating in PR, then she wasn't just an employee. She was a boss. That would mean she can't claim employment discrimination in the traditional sense, because she wasn't being managed. She was part of management. And that one detail alone could destroy her entire legal argument. So imagine what happens next. The court unseals her contract. The public sees her salary, her producer credit, her responsibilities, her behavior clauses, and her confidentiality terms. If those reveal that she had major authority, access, and control, while publicly acting like a victimized employee, her credibility could collapse overnight. There's also talk that these documents could expose a timeline conflict, proving that Blake attached herself to the project earlier than she claimed or had more involvement in decisions than she admitted. That would further strengthen Wayfarer's case that she was a powerful creative partner, not a mistreated staffer. Now, here's something even the legal experts are whispering about. If her contract shows that she had approval over things like wardrobe, script revisions, or marketing strategy, then her public comments criticizing those very things, like her issues with certain costumes or promotional campaigns, could look like bad faith attacks on her own creative work. You see how wild this gets? So what happens if the court finds she breached her agreement? Well, depending on the wording, it could trigger something called a clawback provision, meaning she might have to repay money already earned. Imagine the headlines if the court orders her to return bonuses or reimburse Wayfarer for legal damages. That would be a Hollywood shockwave. Even worse, it could expose her to counterclaims, meaning Wayfarer could turn around and sue her for breaching confidentiality, violating NDAs, or damaging the brand through her public behavior.